There we go. So we're still waiting for anybody else, or is everybody here? Yeah. Good enough? Yeah, great. Next stop. This is usually a 2-hour introduction lecture to the module, CME8021, Safety, Risk and Environment. Normally I do the first half, so it shouldn't really take up to an hour. And normally my colleague, Dr. Sue Hill, takes the second half. Unfortunately, she can't be here today. She's got other things that she's got to see to. So she gives a sincere apologies. I will give you the introduction to the safety part of the module today, so it should take something less than an hour. Okay. It's quite a comprehensive module, this one, in terms of the 3 factors: safety, risk and environment. So you will have a number of lecturers during this period, including myself. Of course, there's me, John Dalton, and Sue Hill. Sue Hill's the module leader for this, so if you have any issues or any problems, please contact her. If it's anything to do with the safety related stuff that I do with you, then by all means contact me. As you can see, we'll cover a number of topics there. Along the list, I've got the different topics and the different people who will be doing this with you. So we've got things such as legislation, environmental issues. That looks like a bit of a code word, hazard, stroke, lock. That's to do with safety. I'll explain what all these abbreviations mean very shortly, but very quickly, hazard is just hazard identification, and LOC is loss of containment. Both of these figure quite large in safety. HAZAN, well, HAZAN is hazard analysis. Hazard analysis methods, you'll be doing them with Phil Hopkins for about 2 hours. And hazard analysis calculations, you spend about 4 hours with Graham Goodfellow. Legislation with Jane Haswell. I used to work in the pipeline industry. I was getting on for 20 years ago. And although I did actually meet some of these people, I was certainly aware of them. They were working in the pipeline industry then. Obviously, they're still working as consultants. So they've got a wealth of knowledge. I'm aware of them. Some of them, I think I met Phil Hopkins once many years ago. He probably doesn't remember. But we've all got some background and some experience in the pipeline industry. So that's what I'll be doing with you. HAZOP, Levy, and Piper Alpha. Now again, that looks a little bit like a coded word. I expect you to understand exactly what that means. HAZOP is hazard operability. It's a technique for identifying hazards in systems. Levy is a particularly nasty kind of explosion that can happen, loss of containment. And Piper Alpha is a case study that we'll go through. So in terms of, Piper Alpha was actually an offshore platform about 20 or 30 years ago, and had a major accident where a lot of people lost their legs. And one of the key points about Piper Alpha is that it became, a lot of the legislation changed after that incident. And there was a lot of things that went on in that incident which were classical failures of safety management. There was 1 or 2 highlighted ones, but there was also a raft of other problems with it, so it makes it a good case study. And if we have a look at the overall structure of the course, we've got the various things such as legislation and regulations, which cover everything that people do. This contains things like the environment, sustainability, environmental standards, and indeed there's a standard there, ISO 14001, and this encompasses things such as management, the approach to these sort of things, such as environmental management systems and risk management systems, and within risk management systems we've got the core of safety that applies to these sort of things. And myself and 1 or 2 of the others, I'll do hazard with you, I'll do a little bit of loss of containment with you, and then there's the other two fellows, Phil Hopkins and Graham Goodfellow, will go through hazard analysis. And all this is underlined by case studies. Well, the case study we'll actually do this year is the Piper Alpha one, and it's just basically what we learned from past disasters, past incidents. There's no point in having, I mean, these incidents are unfortunate, but they happened, and our job as engineers is to learn from them. You know, you can't undo what's been done. If a major incident occurs and a lot of people lose their lives, it's incredibly unfortunate, but we have to look at it very coolly, very clearly, try and understand why the incident happened, and then make sure it can't happen again. Best thing we can do. So that's an overall picture of the structure of this module. The assessment, we will do an in-course assessment on HAZOP, hazard and operability. I'll give you a lecture on HAZOP. We'll then do a workshop on HAZOP. I'll put you in groups and you go away and do a HAZOP study on a little system that we have, and then we'll assess it. The assessment for this is usually, we would do that, we get the group in a room and we talk to the group for half an hour and try and see how much you understand about the HAZOP principle and what you've found in the little system that we give you, and you will get a mark for that. Don't be nervous about it, it's really quite straightforward, and most groups usually do quite well. And that's worth 20% of this module. Then at the end of the semester you will get a 2-hour exam, and that's worth 80% of the module. Now I've got this from last year. I think Sue's got the same format this year. The exam format is you get one question at the very start which is compulsory, and then for the remaining 3 questions you just need to answer 2 out of 3. So that's the way the exam's organised. But don't worry too much about that at the moment. We'll tell you more about that when we get towards the exams at the end of this semester. It's no big deal. Right, so that's the basic gears of the module, just to give you an idea of what it's all about. We thought it's best to give you an introduction at the very head of the module, because quite simply you have so many people that come and give you lectures, it can be quite hard to put the picture together. So what I've tried to do there with those few slides is to just give you a feel for what this module is all about. And it is quite, in just one short module, it is quite comprehensive. We do quite a lot of work in it. Okay. So there we go. So what I'm going to do is give you an introduction to the safety, risk and environment that we do. That's both me and Sue, I suppose. Predominantly the safety part of it, which is what I do. So, how do we manage safety? Does safety need to be managed? What's that all about? Well, we actually have a system in the UK that's been developed over the past, at least 40 years, if not longer, where we've had incidents, we've changed the law to suit, and we now are at a quite mature stage where we can actually manage safety. And the key to managing safety is those 3 items shown on the slide there. One is safety management systems, how you go about doing it safely. 2 is technical, or sometimes in the Chem school we call it process safety, but it's anything that passes through a pipe or machinery, basically, technical or process safety. And that is making sure that your plant actually operates safely. And 3 is an interesting one, motivational safety. That is getting people to work safely. Not the transport. I got to work this morning, but I used the bus. But actually getting people to think how people approach safety. What's their mentality? And that's actually quite a key thing, because as you will see in the case study for Piper Alpha, you can have systems in place to ensure things are done safely, But after a while, it depends on the people's attitudes. And what happens after a while is people get a bit blasé about it, they get a bit casual about the safety, and it just reduces to a tick boxing exercise. So safety becomes, yeah, I've ticked these boxes so everything's okay. And it's not, because they're not really thinking anymore. And motivational safety is about getting people to think. It's a philosophical approach, if you like. It's actually getting people to think and act safe, but understand why they're doing it. They're not just ticking boxes because the boss says you've got to tick those boxes. They're ticking boxes because they understand why someone's doing it. So it's actually quite a key aspect. Fair enough, management systems, fair enough, process safety, yeah, absolutely. But also the key third part of that is the people involved. They are key. If the people involved are not doing it properly, you can have as many management systems and as many technical or process safety methods out there, they just won't be any good. You really need motivation and safety as well. So have a look at safety management first. Well, this is done from a UK point of view because that's the only one I know, but in general terms, the basic principles will apply to most countries. So if you're not from the UK or if you're not from Europe, please bear with me. Have a look at the basic way these things are done. Now, management systems are about defining safety policy, setting the standards, targets. So you're all writing notes, that's good. I've actually put this stuff on Blackboard as well if you want to copy. So setting safety standards and targets, setting up how you do things, the methods, the procedures, the systems of work, monitoring the effectiveness. So it's no point in just setting things up and just hoping everybody follows it. You've basically got to watch as well. So do an audit, do a check, make sure everybody's actually doing what you've said they should be doing. So compliance, monitoring, effectiveness. And also in the UK, what we have to do, and we do it all over the place, this building included, is we meet the requirements of what's known as the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, or HASAWA for short. I'm fortunately, or unfortunately, old enough to remember when this came in, and it was a big change. Before the Health and Safety at Work Act, there was lots of different little safety rules and everything. But after some of the incidents that happened in the UK, the government decided to get together, and they probably had some clever politicians then, I don't know, don't have now, but they did then, and they decided to bring in this act, and it brought everything under one set of rules, the Health and Safety at Work Act, and everybody has to follow it. The bosses, the workers, you name it, everybody has to follow it. And it was a single, comprehensive, integrated system for health and safety legislation. And what it did was it placed the duties on employers, manufacturers, employees, people who were self-employed, even the window cleaner, who was usually self-employed in the UK, that sort of people. It covers all persons at work. It protects the general public if they're affected. So if you're a member of the public and you're walking past a factory and something happens in that factory, so a big lump of metal comes flying out and hits you on the head or something like that, you know, that it protects you as a member of the public as well. And because this was quite comprehensive and it covered all aspects of work and everybody involved in it, they had to set up an executive to actually enforce it. And in the UK, the people we have as this executive are the Health and Safety Executive, or the HSC. Now, if you want to know anything about safety, I would thoroughly recommend their website. They've got a very comprehensive website. It's dedicated to the UK, but a lot of it's just based on common sense. There's some good rules there. I'll show you some of them today. But they are the executive who enforce the rules. So they can actually go into anybody's factory, they can come in here if they wish to, and they can have a look at what you're doing. And if they don't like what you're doing, they can put an improvement notice down and say, stop doing that, improve it. We're going to come back in 2 weeks' time and check that you have. And they will come back in 2 weeks' time, and if you haven't improved it, they'll shut you down. On the other hand, if they turn up at your factory or your process plant or whatever it is you're doing, and they decide what you're doing is hazardous, dangerous, potentially lethal, they'll put a prohibition notice down and say, that's it, you've got to stop. And you have to, you've got no choice. It's done with a reason. There's no, you know, it's absolutely logical. They've got a set of rules, and if you're breaking the rules, they will come in and either give you an improvement notice or shut you down. The HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, also have the power to prosecute in the courts. And this is actually a big thing for them, and they do prosecute people. Especially what usually happens, I mean, they do actually go in and investigate things. If there is an accident of a certain level, where somebody gets seriously injured, somebody gets killed, that sort of thing, by law, you have to inform the HSE. The HSE will then come and investigate the accident, or whatever it is that's happened, and if they think you've done something outside the law, they will actually prosecute you in court. You get an unlimited fine if it's a major incident, or you can actually go to jail. So, what's the most important part of the HACCP? Section 2, there's various sections in it, well, you know, it's a piece of legislature, so it's very big, it's very wordy, it's very difficult to read. I don't think I've read through it. But there's an important point there, and there's actually an important phrase in there as well. It says, it shall be the duty of every employer, that's the bosses, to ensure, and then I've underlined this bit, so far as is reasonably practicable. It's important that. The health, safety and welfare at work of all his employees. Well, it was written in 1974, they would have said his, her employees nowadays, but that's what it's doing there. In plain English, in section 2, it's saying that it is the duty of every employer to ensure the health, safety and welfare at work of all their employees. There it is, in law. It says so far as is reasonably practicable because it understands the fact that no matter how many measures you take, there will always still be accidents, unfortunately. So it puts that practical limit in. What you have to do as an employer, and you'll see later on as an employee, is you must take all reasonable steps to make sure. So the reason for having them words there is, okay, you can take all the reasonable steps to make sure that there's no accidents, but there will still be some accidents. But what do you do to get rid of those little extra accidents? Do you spend £1 million? Do you spend £10 million? That would get rid of all the accidents, but then you go out of business. So there's a reasonable limit to how far you need to go, but you need to show that you've had a look at it and you've gone as far as possible. So you've got to maintain your plant, systems of work, and give people information, instruction, and training. So if you expect somebody to do something, you've got to do that. You've got to make sure that they're well supervised, they're given training, and you've got to make sure that they can actually do the job. You can't just take somebody off the street, put them in charge of a huge machine and say, right, get on with it. So they start getting on with it, next thing you know, they've killed themselves. The employer would be at fault. You have got to make sure that they are properly supervised and they've had adequate training to do that job. If you're happy, it's got to be written down as well. You'll get approval. So there you go, there's the slide. Should have put the slide up when I was explaining that. So far as is reasonably practicable, it's actually an interpretation based on case law. So it says the cost of further reducing the risk must be grossly disproportionate, i.e. out of proportion to the risk itself. So how far do you go to get rid of risk? As long as you've taken reasonable steps, that's acceptable. But if it becomes disproportionate, well, you drive everybody out of business, so there'd be no point to it. What is ALOP? Now this crops up on a regular basis in all safety, all aspects of safety. And this is, it's actually got its own acronym now, ALOP. And what it stands for is as low as reasonably practicable. And that's quite an important one to understand. Right? As low as reasonably practicable. And the concept of reasonably practicable lies at the heart of the British health and safety system, and of course it's a key part of the general duties of health and safety at work. So it means, what it means is that a risk has been reduced, ALOP, as low as reasonably possible. It's about weighing the risk against the sacrifice needed to further reduce it. So this is what I've said, I'll say it for a third time. You've taken all reasonable steps to reduce to reduce risk, and you've actually pushed it as far as you can, but the next step would just be impracticable. And as long as you can prove that to the HSE, you've done your duty. So this is how the HSE describes ALOP. And to do that, they use a carrot. It's not really a carrot, okay? But it's a carrot diagram. Looks a bit like a carrot, depends on what colour you draw it. So I've drawn it like a carrot. What I was saying with this carrot diagram for ALOP is always reasonably practical. Well, what we've got here is level of risk. So we start from the apex of the carrot. We say this is as safe as you can possibly be. Nobody's 100% safe. But this sort of safety is as safe as you might be sitting at home. That's considered to be very, very acceptable. That's a level of safety above and beyond. Not many industries achieve that, not even this place, but that would be safe as hell, sitting at home. Now if we increase risk, this carrot diagram gets wider and wider and wider until we get to the top. We have a level here which we would call unacceptably dangerous. You wouldn't be allowed to do it. It's far too dangerous. You can't do that. I don't know what that could be. Extreme sports, cliff diving, whatever they get up to nowadays. But things where there's a very high risk of death or serious injury would be classed as unacceptably dangerous. So we've got a graded scale there from safest houses to something that's totally outrageously dangerous, can't do it. So we need to sort of chop bits off. And indeed, this is how the HSE does this. So here's our, still got the carrot diagram. And if this is 10 to the minus 6, i.e. once in a million years, I have a cut-off point there. And at the top one, I have 10 to the minus 3, once in 1,000 years. So when you do your hazard analysis, which you'll be doing with Phil Hopkins and Graham Goodfellow, you should be able to come up with a number when you've got a hazard. I'll show you how to identify a hazard, but you'll analyse the hazards with them. So you should be able to come up with the value for your risk. I.e. it's going to happen once in every 5,000 years, let's say. Or it's going to happen once in every 3 million years. Or it's going to happen once every 500 years. And when you've got that number, you can match it onto this diagram. And if your risk comes in here, it's unacceptable. You would have to reduce that risk regardless of the costs. And if you couldn't afford to reduce it, you can't do it. Simple as that. That is the intolerable region. On the other hand, if you're fortunate and your risk comes in down here, that's excellent. That's not really a risk at all. That's perfectly acceptable. You wouldn't have to do anything else. Most industries, most reasonable industries, tend to fall into this section, which is known as the tolerable if ALOP. It's tolerable if you've actually done this as low as reasonably possible. So what that means is the risk should be reduced unless the reduction is impracticable or disproportionate, cost you too much money, would put you out of business. And what you do in industry, this is what they do, this is a lot crops up all the time. You do a risk analysis, a hazard analysis of a particular piece of plant, and you end up, let's say there, what we'll call that, 10 to the minus 50. So it's probably, you know, it's tolerable. You can't stop there. HSE will not let you stop anywhere in this tolerable region. You have to say, that is what I've got. Let's say it's 10 to the minus 4 for the sake of argument. You must then have a look and show the HSE that you've considered how you would push this further down the job. You must show them that you've tried. But then at some stage you said, well, have a look at this, but it was disproportionate. It would have cost too much money to push it any further. And then they will believe that you've tried to do this as low as reasonably possible. That's the key to the art of diagram. Okay? It's quite an important diagram in safety. Fairly straightforward. If you're in the intolerable region, you've got no chance, you've got to reduce it. If you're in the green region, fine, everyone's happy. Most things in industry fall into this area, and you must show the HSE that you've tried to push. You really have tried to push this as far as you can. There it is in words. To be ALOP, you must ask, what more can I do, and why aren't we doing it? The HSE will expect you to have done that. It is required. Implement additional risk reduction measures unless you can't identify any. There isn't any there. You can't do it. The sacrifice, the cost, is disproportionate to the reduction in risk. You can also use cost-benefit analysis studies to actually justify that you've gone as far as possible. Okay, hours management of safety. Technical or process safety. Well, like I mentioned before, LOC, loss of containment, is usually the core reason for any incident. So this technical or process safety is involved in preventing plants from releasing their hazardous contents. And you do that by good design, good construction, and good operation. You must also understand how potential, it's the wrong button, understand how potential major accidents can happen, and if they do, what are the consequences going to be. Now, any really good person who's well into this sort of thing should know how major accidents occur. And if a major accident does occur, what's going to happen? If you don't do that, you shouldn't really be in charge of heavy machinery, should you? To do this, you need design safety studies, hazard identification, hazard analysis, and all of this is encompassed because you need to meet the requirements. This is another bit of legislation, and that date's wrong, it's now 2015, not 1999. Something called the Control of Major Accident Hazard Regulations 2015, or COMA. Now, this COMA that we do in the UK, it actually fulfills an obligation within the European standard. The European Union brought in what's known as the Seveso regulations, and COMA is the UK's response to it. We already had COMA in place. In fact, we had COMA in place from the 19th. We had incidents in the 1970s, and this started off as CMA, Control of Industrial Major Accidents Hazards Regulations, in the 80s, and this really responded to the Seveso Directive of 1982. But other incidents, of course, that to be updated, Seveso 2 Directive in 96, the Seveso 3 is now out, and that meant that we updated our regulations from COMA 1999 to COMA 2015. That sounds a little legally boring and everything, but basically all this is doing is responding to this. Yeah? So I put the 2015 there. So COMA regulations apply mainly to chemical and petrochemical industries, or people who pipe the work there as well. So it does actually apply to pipeline installations. Also applies to people who store fuels, gases, have large warehouses. It's based on how much you've got on site. And that's cut-off points. There's different rates depending on how much you've got.
I just like to know what is the disaster inspection?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. That was, sorry, I mean, this is just the various incidents that's happened. I might have a slide later on that tells you what Bhopal is, but I'll tell you for free. There's a chemical plant in India owned by...
Indian?
Hmm?
Is it Indian?
India. Well, it was partly owned by India. It was also Union Carbide. Union Carbide in the United States owned half the plant, and the other half of the plant was owned by the Indian government. There was a series of very unfortunate circumstances which caused a huge release of a particular chemical, which I can't remember the name of now, because I'm not very good at chemical names. Their safety implementation was extremely poor, and the ensuing gas cloud actually killed about 2,500 people in the town of Bhopal. It was a terrible tragedy, and it actually destroyed the company Union Carbide eventually. They got sold off to, just reduced in size and then got sold off to someone else. And the people in Bhopal, even to this day, haven't received proper compensation for what happened to them. It was a terrible tragedy. It's also a key case study. Unfortunately, we don't have time to do it in this course. But I might put some, if you're interested, I'll put some information up on Blackboard for you. We're happy to do that. Right, so the COMA regulations apply mainly to chemical and petrochemical industries, but also aim to ensure that businesses take all necessary measures to prevent major accidents from happening with dangerous substances. And it limits the consequences to people and the environment of any major accidents. There's the HSC website, and there's a lot of information on there about COMA. As you can see, we've got the COMA 2015, which just came in the year before last. It really, essentially, COMA depends on how much you've got on board, how much you've got on your plant. Essentially, what it means is you've got to predict what the possible consequences might be. You've then got to do action plans to show the local authorities what you would do if such an incident happened. You've then got to pay the fire brigade and the local ambulances to have an exercise to pretend what would happen, and you've got to practice it and know exactly what you would do. See, everything's thought out in advance. And COMA is actually, it's a lecture in its own right. I do give a two-hour lecture to our stage 2 graduates on COMA. Quite an important aspect. Right, number 3, motivational safety. Motivating people to work safely. To do with changing the culture within an organisation. Like I said, it's attitudes to safety, people's behaviour, how they approach safety. Like I say, you can have all the rules and regulations in the world, but if people don't believe in them and don't follow them, they may as well not be there. And also positively reinforcing safe behaviour. So if people are doing the right thing, they should be positively reinforced. And of course, if they're doing the wrong thing, they should be discouraged. And this means using effective communication tools. So you've got to have regular communication with people. You've got to keep on looking at the kind of jobs they're doing, analysing them, making sure that they're safe. So you're watching things, giving people positive feedback if they're doing the right thing, or telling them if they're doing the wrong thing. Now, telling them that they're doing the wrong thing doesn't mean sacking them. It's a bit pointless. If you find somebody doing the wrong thing, the idea is you educate them. You put them on a training course. You try and make them understand why what they're doing is wrong. and you try and change it round to a positive behaviour. I've got a couple of slides here from I don't know where it comes from. I used to have where it comes from, I don't know. But these are two ideas with motivational safety. So if we start with safe behaviour, and you have a good safety culture in your company, right? There's comfort, safety, there are advantages in doing it the right way, everybody stays happy. We tend to repeat this behaviour, again, because it brings success. People say, yeah, you're doing a really good job, we're happy with this. It's externally reinforced by others, because behaviour makes it desirable, it becomes a safe habit. So that is the virtuous route. Unfortunately, because we're all human, we've all got faults, this is more likely to happen. You've got safe behaviour, but usually what the problem is, it just takes too much time. You've got to make sure things are cleaned properly, you've got to mop up spills, all that sort of thing. It's just very inconvenient sometimes. So it has disadvantages. And if you take too much time to do something, well, that says, well, you take too much time, you failed. You're not doing what you're supposed to. So what a lot of people will do is they'll change, they'll find a shortcut, find an easier way to do these things. And of course, once you do that, it's got advantages because you're the very efficient person. You get the job done. The boss doesn't see all the nasty details of all the shortcuts you've taken. So you repeat it. It becomes an unsafe habit. You don't want to be in that column, you want to be in this column. So you can see safety is not easy. People tend to do that, whereas really what we want is this. If we start off in an organisation with unsafe behaviour, well, what happens is you've got unsafe behaviour. If you're working in a place where there's a lot of unsafety going on, things like that, well, you might experience a near miss. We have 2 or 3 near misses in the labs here every year. Something happens, you think, goodness, yeah, there was an explosion, but I was going to walk past there. If I'd been there as the explosion happened, I would have been killed. I feel really, really nasty about that. You know, I don't feel good about it. So if you experience a near miss, or even an accident, minor one hopefully, you will have pain, punishment, fear, you'll feel disadvantaged because you were a victim, and it will tend to change your behaviour. And hopefully, what it will do, it will tend to change your behaviour in the correct way. So people often who have near misses, somebody become really good at safety for a very obvious reason that they've had a near miss. Hopefully it will become a safe habit. Starting off with unsafe behaviour, well, this becomes the same thing. Bad safety culture saves time, brings advantages, prestige amongst peers because you're Mr. Efficient, get things done. And the problem with that is it strongly reinforces unsafe behaviour. And again, you don't want to be in that column. That would be the column you want to be in. Wow, we're running out of time. Hazards, why they occur. Right, little explanation on LOC. Hazards relating to a process. Tell you what's worthwhile mentioning at this stage. You'll have often heard me say the word danger this morning. You'll have often heard me use the word hazard. Danger and hazard, dangerous and hazardous, are pretty much interchangeable. In the process safety world, they tend not to use the word danger. They prefer to use the word hazard. In fact, you see the word danger disappearing from all the literature on safety nowadays. So they call them hazardous incidents, whereas the man in the street might call it a dangerous incident. The professional engineer tends to call it a hazardous incident. So hazardous incidents relating to a process occur because of loss of containment, LOC. LOC just means a substance that should be contained is not. And an awful lot of major accidents, in fact almost all of them that I can think of, occur because some substance wasn't where it was supposed to be. It's as simple as that. Loss of containment. So you need to look at ways in which LOC can occur. So one of the consequences of LOC can be, well, you've got tons of flammable or toxic or liquid under pressure and at high temperature, exploding, not being where it's supposed to be, and the consequences of this are typically things like harm to people outside the factory, the public, which you can't do now. It's against the law. Harm to employees, so if you're an engineer working there, that's you. Damage to the plant. When you're working with engineering equipment, then you are in charge of very expensive, hundreds of millions of pounds worth of equipment. You're responsible for it. It's owned by the company, which is owned by the shareholders. You are responsible for that equipment, so it's your duty to make sure it's operated properly and you don't damage it. Loss of production. Most people involved in industry are, well, quite a lot of people are involved in actually producing something. At the end of the day, there's a product. And that product is the profit that pays your wages, and the company and the shareholders as well. So really, money comes into it as well. After harm to people, of course. Harm to the environment. And bad publicity. Bad publicity. Sounds like a bad joke, doesn't it? But if you have a major accident on your plant, the publicity, the bad publicity alone, can cause untold damage to your company and your job in turn as well, of course. Like I said before with Bhopal, the Union Carbide plant was a huge organisation in the United States, but after the Bhopal incident, it slowly disappeared until it was sold on to somebody else. More recently, BP had a number of notable accidents in the United States especially. The last one was the Deepwater Horizon one a few years ago, and they got a huge amount of bad publicity. So if you think safety is expensive, try bad publicity. It costs BP billions of dollars. So there's some of the consequences likely to happen when you have loss of containment. So there's three main effects. Release of material can lead to all three of these basically, either or. Fire, explosion, toxic release. Nothing you really want. I'll actually show you some films of various things like this going on. There's 5 main mechanisms for release. 1, vessel or pipe bursts. 2, vessel or pipes weakened to failure. 3, you get leaks and releases from a weakened containment envelope, pressure vessels, things like that, or pumps, heat exchangers. High energy missiles cause further punctures, part of the domino effect. If you have a major loss of containment, such as a levee, for example, you will get lots of metal flying all over the place, and it causes punctures of surrounding equipment and uncontrolled releases. So we'll have a look through the causes and how they're prevented for all 5 of them, and then we'll call it a day from today. So, bursts, ruptures, etc. So we're looking at bursts of a vessel or a pipeline to be caused by internal explosion, overpressure, runaway reaction, where you've got the wrong chemicals in something and they react with each other and you get an exothermic reaction, or decomposition. It's just propellant pipeline. And these are prevented by proper control of your reaction, your operation, that sort of thing. Good design and operation, good protective systems, so they're well equipped with relief valves, bursting discs, vents. You've got good trip systems or interlocks to say that, which prevent all those things from happening. Vessel weakens until it fails. Well, you've got various things applying to that. You've got corrosion, big one in pipelines, I suppose. Creep, embrittlement, all material properties, especially cracking, stress corrosion, cracking, things like that. Now these are usually prevented by good design codes. That's the first step. If you design to the code or the standard, then that's a good way to do it. Good material choice, good design. If you've got a corrosion problem, maybe a cathodic protection system or something like that. And of course, regular inspection of the equipment. That's what I do. Right, weakened vessel. Why would a vessel not be weak? Incorrect assembly, this happens. Something's apart for maintenance and it's not put back together again properly. When you put it back online, you can get a leak from it. Poor maintenance. If you operate things outside the design envelope, so you're operating them for something they weren't actually designed for, that can lead to leaks and releases. Bad modifications. Somebody's had a good idea, we'll stick this valve on here and this pipe on here, that should work. So quite often it doesn't, because it hasn't been properly thought out. In fact, there's a whole science in safety now called management of change. So if you make any changes to a plant, you have to actually go through a set of routines to see if you actually change the hazard and risk applied to that plant. So bad modifications, treat with a lot of care. And of course wrong materials, well that's the designer's problem. But that could also be designed outside the envelope. The designer designed a reactor to contain a particular material, and you used a different material, then you might get this sort of problem. So this is prevented by proper management of operations and good maintenance policies, so, and includes things such as management of change as well, of course. High energy missiles, puncturing things. The causes here, machinery failure. I've seen turbines fail and shed their blades extremely quick. It's like bullets flying all over the place. Extremely dangerous, or hazardous, I should say. Mechanical energy, well, a lot of machinery that's high speed, heavy, rotating. There's a lot of energy involved in that. And if that fails, it can fly off various things. Missiles and domino effects. Things getting hit by external vehicles. If your pipeline runs alongside a road and a vehicle has a crash on that road, a huge vehicle goes off the road, hits your pipeline, then maybe you need to think, if it's next to a road, putting some protection in. So these sort of things, they're prevented by hazard identification, good layout, design time, think about things, don't put high risk units next to each other, put a high risk unit next to a low risk unit. That helps prevent domino effects, good emergency isolations, and a mitigation factor, secondary containment. If you understand the consequence, and you could get high energy missiles flying all over the place, then you might have to put concrete buns around something. Well, that's a last resort these days. Uncontrolled release from a process. Again, incorrect maintenance operations. Somebody hasn't put something back together again properly. It's a good one there. Mal-operation of vents and drains. You'd be surprised how often that happens. When we do Blevy, I will come back to that, because a tank farm in France back in the 1960s was completely destroyed because somebody got a bit mixed up draining a propane tank. The fire went for 3 days, killed people. Unexpected relief system discharges, yeah, your relief valve left when it shouldn't, or instrument maloperation. Your instrumentation is not doing the proper control that it's intended. So how do we do this? How do we prevent this? Well, good hazard identification, that's where hazard comes in, and transferring that into good design. It's basically identify the potential hazards and actually change the design so that you can cut those hazards out. That's ideally the way to do it. And management control procedures, of course, as well. Okay. My hour's up. There are various other slides on there. Now, like I said, I've put this on Blackboard. I do not have the time to go through this today. And there's some information there about some of the case studies, and that there is actually a slide there on the Bhopal incident as well. But I can put some more stuff on Blackboard if you want. Okay. I think Sue's put the schedule, the lecture schedule up on Blackboard, so you probably know it better than I do. Okay, so I'll see you next time. I'm not quite sure what we're doing, but I'll probably give you a lecture on HAZOP next time I see you. Okay?